What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to the Mic Check Podcast. You're now in the booth with Q. Today we're going to be discussing Canelo Alvarez's rumored potential opponents for 2024, as well as some other opponents that may still be considered, in my opinion, to be better options, viable options, and all of the following. Before we get started, please make sure that you like, comment, subscribe to this channel. Make sure you give us your feedback, comments, and thoughts on other topics that you'd like us to discuss. Maybe some thoughts on the topic that we are discussing. If you guys disagree, agree, or otherwise. So let's get right into it. Just a couple of days ago, it was announced, not announced, I shouldn't say, rumored that Canelo Alvarez is potentially eyeing two opponents for 2024. As we all know, Canelo typically fights in May as well as September on two major Mexican holidays. And so it's pretty standard for him to fight on those two dates, but what's not standard and what hasn't been typical is the fact that he is actually going to be considering these two opponents. Michael Benson reposted a report that came from Chava with ESPN. Salvador Rodriguez is his formal name, basically stating that Canelo is looking to potentially face Jermall Charlo in May and then Terrence Crawford in September. Now, those are just rumors. Those are the people that his sources have said that are, on the list, are being considered the number one options for those. And this kind of sent social media, boxing fans into quite a bit of a frenzy on X, formerly known as Twitter, because obviously the one guy missing from this graphic, the person that everybody has been wanting to see Canelo fight at the 168-pound division is David Benavidez. David Benavidez, who's now, gotten back-to-back strong wins against Caleb Plant, as well as Demetrius Andrade in November of 2023. He's been on pay-per-view now in back-to-back fights. And this was kind of the prelude that was supposed to, by most people's account, lead into him getting a Canelo fight in 2024. Now, like I mentioned, both of these guys, Jermall Charlo and Terrence Crawford, are simply rumors that are being reported by Salvador Rodriguez. But obviously they are viable options because they're guys that in Terrence Crawford that, have a lot of fanfare at this point, are kind of popular at this point, and are kind of, ticking upwards on the scale as far as popularity is concerned because of his demolition job that he did on Errol Spence last July. Jermall Charlo has always been a guy who's been kind of in the mix for a Canelo fight, despite the fact that he's been extremely inactive. He did have a comeback fight in 2023 on the same card as David Benavidez when he beat David's older brother, Jose Benavidez Jr., in a catchweight fight between 160 and 168 pounds. The fight was a decent performance by Jermall. However, it wasn't the performance that most people expected because Jose Benavidez is obviously a guy who moved up from welterweight, who's had some leg injuries in the past and was expected to get knocked out by Jermall. So from that standpoint, most people thought that Jermall would kind of roll through him, and that's not necessarily what happened. At any rate, these are two of the guys that Chava believes are in the mix. And while they may not be the top of the list when you talk about guys that people are going to want to see Canelo fight, I think that those fights are going to be decently competitive. The one issue that does come up when you talk about Jermall is that obviously Canelo just fought his twin brother, Jermell Charlo. And while Jermell was at 154 and moved up to 168, at this point in their careers, I would probably argue, and most people would probably agree with me, that Jermell is at a higher level, or, as far as his accomplishments, as far as the level of boxing that he's been able to display, that he's become the better fighter of the two brothers. While earlier in their career, that wasn't necessarily the case. Jermall was considered probably the better of the two twin brothers. So there's going to be a little bit of complaint from that standpoint that obviously what has Jermall done to necessarily deserve this fight, especially when it's your twin brother who looks just like you, talks just like you, went in there and had such a dismal performance because Jermell was able to do absolutely nothing against Canelo Alvarez in their fight this past September. Crawford, there's issues with that fight, obviously, because he's a guy that would be moving up from 147 to everyone would have to assume that fight happens at 168 because you would want to win the undisputed titles that Canelo has. Not only would you make a big payday, but if you're Crawford, not very many people have ever been able to go up 3 weight classes and win, a full world title, nonetheless the undisputed title. Roy Jones Jr. did move up from, I believe it was 175 pounds. He moved up 2 weight classes, or was it? Yeah, it was 2 weight classes up to heavyweight to beat John Ruiz. But obviously, John Ruiz only had the WBA title at that point, so he only won 1 belt. And that was only 2 weight classes. If Terrence Crawford was to move up, that would be 3 weight classes: 147 past 154 past 160 to 168. So from that standpoint, there may be some drawback. And obviously, the biggest drawback is the fact that there's a guy right at 168 that's been clamoring for a fight against Canelo that a lot of people would like to see. Other Mexican Americans and Mexican nationals would like to see in David Benavidez get his chance to challenge Canelo Alvarez. He is currently the WBC's interim world champion. He's been that now for, I believe, just over a year. And he's a viable champion. He's a viable option for Canelo. And I believe that he should be considered for one of these 2 fights. So if I had it my way, Canelo can pick his lot of the litter when it comes to these 2 guys. I believe that, he should be able to pick his lot because he's earned it. He's fought, the most reigning world champions, the most current world champions. He's the undisputed world champion as far as guys that are still active today. He has the resume to back that up. So from my standpoint, I understand why, he may not want to fight David immediately next, but I do think that he needs to fight him in 2024. So if he wants to fight him in May, fight him in May. If he wants to fight him in September, fight him in September. But I believe he does need to be one of these 2 options. So from that standpoint, I can understand people's frustration. But obviously, it's a situation where the money talks, and Canelo makes the most money of any fighters that fight, here in America, as far as, U.S. audiences are concerned. So he's going to, get a little bit more leniency when you talk about sanctioning bodies and belts and things like that not being stripped away from him. So, that's probably why, David Benavidez has not been called as the mandatory challenger just yet. So from that standpoint, you guys give me your thoughts. Drop them in the comment box below. Let me know who you guys think that Canelo should fight in his 2 fights in 2024. Should it be one of the 2 guys pictured on the screen and then David Benavidez? Should it be a 2-fight deal with David Benavidez? Should it be neither of those options and maybe somebody that we haven't mentioned? You guys let me know in the comment section below. As always, appreciate the comments, appreciate the support. We'll always make sure to get back to you guys as much as possible. It's been Q on the Mic Check Podcast. We're out. Peace.